I'd like to begin the review with a foreword that I am an individual who prefers low profile and shies away from publicity. I also am rather reluctant to discuss the success I've had in business. Consequently, our point of view is from one whose life has been shaped by circumstances, the period, and the counsel of many who were associated with me.
Bob's intellect, entrepreneurship, experiences, with pharmaceutical products, the invention of Tylenol, all of that was what really drove him to say, I want to create something called a foundation that's going to do wonderful things that have never been done before and benefit the communities of the 5-county Philadelphia area.
He took his responsibility as a citizen of our community to give back. That was such a blessing to our region, to have someone who believed in the community in which he was a part.
He had a twinkle in his eye, and I think it came through in a lot of the photographs of him. You know, he just had this sense of humanity that was really genuine.
I met Bob McNeil in the 1970s when I was just a graduate student. The memory that I have of him is that he admitted that he didn't know everything and that other people might know more. He loved consultants. He loved bringing in people and learning from them. He was so modest about his own intelligence and education, actually. He always wanted to bring the smarter person into the room to help him.
I think the part that those of us who interacted with him remember the most was that he would thank the individuals who were involved with the project. He would ask who was involved, how can I thank them? That level of personal engagement and the warmth and the authenticity of that was not only endearing, but made you want to really see that what he wanted was going to succeed.
I had started the foundation in 1964. It was the Robert McNeil Foundation, but I changed it to Barra so that I didn't want my name in it.
I guess I first became involved with the Barra Foundation when I was asked to meet Bob McNeil and talk with him about grant making. I had just started at the William Penn Foundation, which at the time was called the Haas Community Fund. He asked if I would come out and chat with him about how William Penn was making grants. He was interested in using grant funds to seed projects as risk capital to fund things that nobody else was doing and have Barra willing to take a risk.
He and I worked long hours to try to come up with the definition. He ended up pretty much by saying, well, what I want is for something to have never, ever been done before. And that, to me, he said, is innovation, and that will drive the process. And I said, that could be a little more difficult than you're saying, but we'll give it a whirl.
I would say to him that coming from the for-profit world, what nonprofits were lacking was the kind of capital to try new ideas, that oftentimes they operated right at the margin. And so there was nothing left over to try a new idea, to take a gamble on something. And that led us down a conversation that lasted several years around the importance of funding innovation, of trying things. And if you didn't fail, it meant that you weren't bold enough, you didn't try hard enough, you weren't courageous enough, you just were living in the safe zone.
We have a specific objective. We do a certain amount of community work in the fields of our interests, which are human services, health, education, and arts and culture.
The American galleries at the museum, they're now called the McNeil Galleries. And in the run-up to them, we used the money from his Center for American Art to stage little laboratory installations, to do some test drives on labels, on putting things together, to see how audiences react to those things. What we were trying to do was tell a new story of American art, a more inclusive story with different voices than had been told in the past. The inclusion of Indigenous Americans, the inclusion of African Americans, of Latin American art. These are things that we weren't showing in the galleries in the past. And Bob, I think, loved the idea that we were trying to expand the horizons, to extend the fence for what was to be included in American art.
Barra was a strategic partner in the development of the Community Partnership School, which was a partnership initially between Germantown Academy and Project Home. It was located in the second poorest zip code of the city of Philadelphia. They wanted to provide the same kind of education that Mr. McNeil had and his grandchildren and his family, just excellence in education. It was a really powerful and beautiful vision. You know, having the kids come to Germantown Academy for an education was a great opportunity, but maybe an even better opportunity would be to have the education that Germantown Academy was providing right there in the neighborhood, touching the parents, the students, the neighbors, that whole community.
We're wrestling with a very specific issue at the zoo, which is that we are bound on all sides by some really significant ways in which it would be very difficult to expand and grow. Our idea was then, okay, let's create a series of pathways, a series of trails that animals can move above your head, as opposed to putting them in one static area. And the Barra Foundation was one of those really important partners that said, it's a different idea. Whether it succeeds or not, it has all of the hallmarks of an idea that could really take hold. When we started out, I think most people thought we were nuts because it wasn't the kind of way that people thought about zoo habitat areas and exhibits. But today, 10, 12 years later, it's in 70 zoos across the world.
You said that was founded in 1964?
Yes, but it came into its own in the last 20 years, where we have a specific objective.
During my 10-year period, I saw a lot of change, and all of it was moved toward a naturalization of, I believe, what Bob wanted. And that was kind of gotten imbued in the DNA of the organization.
I think it had to do with his sense of place, partly, his sense of good fortune and his willingness to return his good fortune to the people of Philadelphia. All of those things, I think, were the impetus to his philanthropy.
Bob, when you say the word humble, was humble. I mean, he knew truly what he had, knew his capabilities. I think was very proud of what he accomplished, and he just appreciated what he had achieved and wanted to give back, and that's the way he was.
His ideas continue on. I mean, that notion of can you think about it differently? Can you approach it differently? Can you turn the question around? Can you try something and see if it works? That's still very much part of our culture, and that will never go away.